Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 7 of School Spirits. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Some interesting plot thickening or thick plotting going on in this episode, where obviously the main focus ends up being Nicole. Like, you could tell Nicole was kind of off the entire episode, and then especially with her portfolio being nothing, like a large chunk of it being large amounts of photos of Maddie, even to the point Simon was looking at it, he's like, whoa, this is pretty intense. And she's like, what? Like, yeah, I took a whole bunch of photos of you too, but you're just not nearly as photogenic as Maddie. It does seem like Nicole had an obsession with Maddie. I started to wonder, could it be that Nicole was secretly in love with Maddie? That's why I was kind of wondering, like, that was the thing with Simon. It could be that both of them, because Simon tells her later on that he loves her, but I don't know if that's like you're my best friend, I love you, or like, no, like, I love you. I don't know how to fully interpret that, because it always felt like Simon's connection with Maddie ran deeper, but we ended up finding out that, like, a year ago, like last February, that apparently, both Maddie and Simon were chastising Nicole because it seemed like everything she did was just her copying Maddie's style, trying to be like Maddie. And maybe that's just because of stuff that was going on in her own life, and she just kind of wanted to be someone else, you know? But I also wondered, like, could it just secretly be like, no, I want us to be even closer, so by us having all the same things, like, we become closer, because maybe she was a little envious of how close, because Simon and Maddie have so much history together, and they're so close, that maybe Nicole kind of wanted the same thing. It's just like, it's a combination of, I wanted to get close to you, I was also kind of maybe in love with you, and maybe I just, like, wanted to just not be me for a while, who knows. But like, that argument, like, all those years ago, like, I mean, not all that, like a year ago, whatever, Simon's wondering, could that be like what Nicole's like been harboring in like a mental jar of just like harboring like issues against both of us, which Maddie's like, no, we apologized to her and she's been fine ever since. Because it's like, yeah, just based on everything, you would assume like, oh, they've been pretty tight before now. But the fact is, it turns out, yes, Nicole is the one that sent the video. Because, yeah, she just made it seem like she got sent the video as well. But I guess, like, maybe when she must have accidentally sent it to, like, Xavier and Simon as well. Or maybe she did that, once again, just to kind of cover her own tracks. I don't remember the real reason why she ended up doing that. Maybe it's supposed to lead them down a different trail, not hoping it would lead back to her, or whatever the case may be. I also think it's interesting as Nicole kind of calls it, like, look at you guys getting all Scooby-Doo-ish, because it's not just Xavier and Simon, they've even got Claire mixed up in it as well. Like, all right, let's try and find out what happened to Maddie, but Nicole took such offense to it. Obviously, it was her kind of covering her own trail, but it's also like, yeah, the only reason why you're trying to help Claire is because this is about clearing your name with everything else that's going on, but you never really cared about Maddie, which is, it's yes and no, because I'm sure there's a lot of regret on Claire's part with everything that's going down recently, but also knowing at one point in time her and Maddie were BFFs, and I think maybe a little bit of that, right, we let so much time pass between us, like we never spoke to each other, and now it's like I may never get that opportunity to make things right between me and Maddie. Life is so short, you never know what curveballs it's going to throw your way, so I think a little bit of that is there, because we do know that they were close at one point in time, so... But once again, Nicole was also lashing out because she was dealing with everything. I love her getting on a computer and like threatening that kid to like, oh, get off the computer or you're not going to make it to 10th grade. I was like, yo, I get it. You have evidence on that computer, that one in particular you're trying to delete. But the problem is there's a potential backup copy. So even if something gets deleted from the computer, there's likely a backup in the system somewhere. So... because the plan was to use Claire's, she's going to bust up her own car and they're going to file a police report. I love that she was about to head to the back windshield. And whoa. I think one window's enough, Claire. And then just Simon's like, wow, like, you must have like a thing of like, they're strong women, right? And Jennifer's like, yeah, I guess you're right. And she went to file the police report. And then Simon and Xavier went back and looked in the evidence and they ended up finding a boot print, but the boot print doesn't match Maddie's, because the way Simon ended up figuring out is because the shoes she had are fakes. whoever made those actual boot prints had like real versions of those shoes. So like she has not, because Maddie had knockoffs. So there's a question like, who could it be? And who found the shoe prints? Nicole did. And Sandra and Xavier weren't with her when she found them. So it's like, well, because they never expressed, because I know like she found the footprint and stuff like that. And she was obviously covering her own trail and stuff, but I don't know. They didn't expressly say the footprints were hers. Because, like, does she even own those type of shoes? Maybe she does. I mean, because it was the whole thing of she was copying Maddie's style. So if Maddie has, like, shoes, those versions of those shoes, maybe Maddie has knockoffs, but maybe Nicole didn't and has, like, the real versions of them. So they just never expressly were, like, it's implied and kind of makes you think, but never directly said that those are for a fact Nicole's boot prints, you know? Because obviously this is all about trying to prove Mr. South's innocence, because none of them really believe that he did, especially in Xavier's case, because it's like, right, my alibi, it's Mr. South's alibi, because he alibied me at the time of anything happening to Maddie, because I was too busy in 8th period trying to open up Maddie's phone, and he was in the boys' locker room the entire time whistling the theme to the song to Titanic. So I know he was there, so he has an alibi too, but my dad's not using it because, and Xavier says something like, yeah, my dad, when he finds someone to kick around, he sticks to it. He's like, trust me. And I'm like, ugh. And then we kind of get into that later on when his dad accuses him of like, oh, you were in there tampering with evidence. He's like, well, you some like calling him a loser and everything. I was like, oh, wow, your dad's a piece of shit. And he showed his true colors. And the wrong person to do that in front of is Claire, because Claire's like, wow, like the real, like she's basically calling him the real loser in this situation. That's someone who finds the need to like bully someone else, you know. It's like, yeah, you're bullying your own son right now. And it's like, right, my mom wants me to get home before it gets too dark because the town's not as safe as it used to be. So it kind of shows you who he is, because that was even something that Claire and Xavier were kind of hinting at, that Xavier's dad's not going to look further into this because he's got his guy, because he needs to solve this and get it wrapped up, especially with an election around the corner. He you know, and that's why I was saying it's kind of sucky that Claire was there to hear that, because now, for one, it shows you what kind of relationship, like, cause we hadn't really dived into Xavier and his father's relationship much up to this point. Like, we had interactions, but this was like the first time we saw, I mean, maybe if you go back, you can read between the lines of some of the combos they had and see the douchebaggery that is there, that is his dad. But Claire's parents gave a huge check she gave him a huge check last episode saying it was from her parents. Like, once again, we don't know if she used her own money to front that or whether that actually was true. But if Claire puts the right words in play, mainly specifically for her mom and her stepdad, then that money could be retracted, you know, pulling away from your campaign and such. So that was just an interesting development on that front. I wonder, is there going to be more extenuating circumstances to why he's the douchebag that he is? Because we don't know about Xavier's mom and that whole, could it be a thing of maybe he was always that person? Did Xavier's mom die? Did she leave because of Xavier's dad? You know, the fact is that he's kind of a power tripping bully. Kind of not the best person not to be a cop, but also worst person to be a sheriff. So I'm wondering how much they're going to lean into that. Was it just kind of like, hey, I made my mistakes, I'm going to do better? Or is he just going to be a garbage person all the way through? Well, you know, it's going to be interesting to see if that's just him at his core or what. On the undead side of things, we have the squad trying to help Maddie, because they have I guess the seniors put on these mock trials and stuff, and they kind of participate, but it's like, no, let's focus on Maddie's side of things, because it's like, oh, could the janitor have a reason for killing you? And it's kind of what Charlie was pointing out. It's like, yeah, I get it, maybe something like that is the reason why you blocked it out. He's like, because I get it, I blocked out the entire my 8th grade year because it was pretty rough for me, because that was Rhonda's standpoint of right, maybe whatever you block, it was so traumatic that your brain is protecting itself. And Wally, you know, doing what he can to help out Maddie, obviously because of everything last episode. But yeah, because he likes Maddie, and I love that it's like every time Simon's name comes up, you can see it kind of gets under his skin, and even Rhonda points it out later on. Because it's like, yeah, because like when he was trying to make her remember, it's like all she focused on were memories of Simon. It's like, oh yeah, he's my best friend. It's like maybe a little bit more. Maybe she never really realized it until now, but you know, you could tell it. And obviously for Wally, it's like, no, I've got all the time. Like I get it. She's still like, you know, it's not been that long since she died. So yeah, she's still holding on to life and not kind of living her afterlife like I'm trying to live now. So. But they were trying to like bring back her memories like with music or food, but none of it was working. Dawn's the one that suggested, oh, let's do because they were thinking of doing what was it they were going to do? They were going to do something, hypnotism, but Dawn was like, you probably don't want to do that. And when she mentioned it, I'm like, I don't know if that's really a thing or is that just like Dawn's wild like mind concocting that. She made it almost sound like if you hypnotize someone, it leaves their body free even as a spirit so that a spirit can come in. That might be more of a living thing you have to be worried about, but maybe it's something that even ghosts have to worry about because I'm wondering if that ties into some of the afterlife stuff. But yeah, Dawn's the one that suggested like rather than doing all that, let's do an anti-seance. And when they did that, we got deep in because Dawn's kind of like floaty and hippie-ish and everything. It was really dark when we got into her past of here are my friends, we're going to make a song. But then I got there early and they were there making I showed up and I caught them bad mouthing me everything about me. And these two were supposed to be my friends. And they just kept going and going. And the moment they saw her looking at it, you know, she panicked like a coffee had got knocked over, touched some plugs. So the moment she grabbed the light, she died. That's horrendous. That's like your last moment. You know, obviously everyone's kind of Rhonda remembers the last song that played before the guidance counselor murdered her. Charlie, him and Emilio weren't in a good place when he died. Obviously, Wally was but obviously, you know, we now know his mom really pushed him to play football and he only did it for her sake. So kind of he stopped no longer living for her sake. He's living his afterlife for himself instead of her. So, but that's pretty dark with the whole Dawn thing. It's like, yeah, let's stop the seance. It was heartbreaking. It's because they'd seen her so floaty and just kind of spacey and stuff. And it's just you know, very hippie-ish. But that moment of that pure, wow, she's tearing up because it's right. She's it's not fair. It shouldn't have been me that died. It should have been them. They were the horrible people talking and they were supposed to be my friends and they were bad mouthing me like that. And I wonder on some level, did they ever regret, it's right, our friend died hearing us badmouth her, and I don't know, you know, and that's really heartbreaking. Now this is where we get into a really interesting part where basically she ended up, she's like, I'm sorry, that whole seance thing was supposed to be about you, Maddie, and I didn't really help you. But she's like, no, Dawn, it's okay. I'm the one that, we kind of owe you an apology because the fact is what happened, you don't owe us an apology. Someone should apologize to you because what happened to you wasn't right. The fact is you are a really good friend, Dawn, and you shouldn't have to, because she realized how much pain she had caused Nicole. It's right, I had an opportunity, we didn't even realize the pain I'd caused one of my best friends, and now I'm not in a position to really mediate that while I had the opportunity because I didn't see what kind of pain I had caused Nicole, because it turns out that is at the core of it. Because, well, let's circle back before we get into the Dawn stuff, finish up the Dawn stuff. Basically, Nicole was here at the school to record the video because the AV club or whatever was there at the same time the cheerleaders were and everything. So it does seem like Nicole was here, and Maddie was reluctant to, you know, it's right, we go accusing our best friend, she'll never forgive you. But, you know, Maddie's like, no, I have to accept that because she's coming to realize right, no one is who we thought we were. She's learning that first and foremost, finding out about Anderson and obviously about Xavier and everything. So a lot of things have kind of come to the surface that it's right, maybe people aren't what I thought they were. And because Simon had an interview about school, I'm backtracking to a lot of stuff, but it's all connected, so stick with me. He blew up his interview that he had to go to Northwestern because for him it's it doesn't matter. My plans to go to Northwestern were based around us doing this and that and XYZ together. But if you're not going, then there's no point. But for Maddie, it's like, I want you to, just because I can't live my life anymore doesn't mean you have to stop living yours. She's got to live her afterlife. She's got to live her death. You've got to live your life. But for him, it's like, because he knows that, he's like even saying, why am I even helping you solve this mystery? Because if I figure out what happened to you, there's a good chance you're going to move on and leave me behind. But she's like, yeah, but eventually you will graduate in like June or whatever, and you're going to end up leaving me behind regardless. So, but it's like, right, I need to know the truth about what happened, and ended up confronting Nicole. She didn't do anything to Maddie, but she needed the money from Anderson. She was blackmailing Anderson because she needed money to attend Northwestern, because none of the art schools accepted her. They said, like, yeah, there was like the 2 interviews she had, they looked at her portfolio and said basically it sucked. That's why Nicole was kind of heavy on herself, like beating herself up about her portfolio, because what other people have said, because she hadn't told Simon or Maddie that. Because, I mean, well, didn't she? Because I thought in the first episode when they were looking back and it wasn't in the whole thing of like, I thought she had said she had gotten accepted. Maybe that was her lying, or she just at the very least said I'm having an interview where they're going to see. So, but I could have sworn they were celebrating because she had gotten accepted, but she was probably lying to them. Because for her, she was trying to save up money because there was no way her parents were going to be able to afford sending her to a school like Northwestern. And it's like, well, why didn't you tell Maddie and I about, the review on your portfolio? She's like, why? To have another thing for you to kind of look at me like I'm pathetic? And then that moment, Maddie and Simon realized like what kind of pain they caused Nicole without even realizing. And so that's where we kind of catch up with the Dawn thing. Because of that, her experience recently with realizing how much hurt she'd given Nicole made her kind of have a little more clarity with the whole thing that happened to Dawn. And so it's like, right, you were a good friend, you didn't deserve it. And we see that Dawn moved on. I was like, Maddie is going to end up being the key to, I think, helping a lot of people. Just like I think there's still going to be more to it, because it's about each one of them still carrying something that's holding them here. There's still the Emilio and Charlie. There's still more to that's still holding them. Because I think it's going to be, if I had to, like, going on another tangent, like in Lucifer, the TV show, hell, you're in hell by your own guilt. It's like Lucifer's like, I don't hold you here. I don't keep you here. Your own guilt keeps you here. Until you're no longer guilty, you'll never be able to go back to heaven. So obviously we've seen that there are exceptions to that. Like obviously, like a great example of that was the guy Lee. He eventually made his way to heaven because he finally let go of his own guilt and kind of forgave himself. I mean, that show is about guilt because Lucifer's got a lot of guilt and, hatred, self-hatred and stuff like that. That's a larger conversation about that show. But I was wondering if that's kind of what this is. Like a lot of hate, self-hatred and guilt is what keeps people here. They're the reason why they're stuck. Their feelings of not being able to fully let go of their guilt is why they stay here. But Dawn was able to kind of let it go because of what Maddie said, and it made her feel better. Kind of let her finally let go of that anger and resentment she had. Once again, parallels nicely with kind of what Nicole was dealing with. But in that moment, Charlie, because I was about to say, like, oh, no one's going to know what happened to Dawn, but Charlie, Wally, and Rhonda are feeling it, and they're like, whoa, what was that? It's like, wait, do you think? It's like, yeah, I think Dawn crossed over. It's like, did anyone remember this happening with Janet? And Rhonda's got this look on her face like, no. Now you're like, Dr. Martin's a liar. He's never actually helped anyone cross over. So it's like, what happened to Janet did. I mean, we don't know what ghosts can do to each other. It could easily be a thing of he potentially killed her, or just like maybe he knows something he's not letting the others know. Because we saw a darker side in, because it's like, once again, him pushing people is kind of like my way or the highway. Like, no, this is the only way it's going to work. But especially this episode when he got up in Rhonda's grill of like, right, you're doing this and you're doing that. And it's like, weren't you supposed to keep an eye on Maddie? It's like, yeah, but I'm trying to be a friend. Like, she's still figuring this out. No, she's supposed to be finding a balance. Like, do you actually want to cross over? It's like, I do. Like, no, I don't think you do. And Charlie walked in on that. He's like, okay, we're about to do that thing. And Rhonda leaves with him, but he's kind of looking at Dr. Martin. It's like, yeah, he's scary. And even in that moment when it happened, when Dawn crossed over, Dr. Martin's like, what's going on here? Part of me wonders, could we have like, I was almost wondering if this is going to be kind of like a Frighteners situation. It's like, God, that's such a good movie. I have not rewatched that in a very long time, The Frighteners. I kind of forget that that's also like, I have to go back to that movie because obviously I know it's like a Michael J. Fox movie, but I'd be so curious to go back to see like who's in that. Isn't that Jake Busey in that? I think spoilers. He's the main guy, the main villain. I know Chi McBride is in that. It's just one of those classic movies you probably go back and you're like, oh man, I forgot like how many like people like you're familiar with like are in like in that actors you're like are very recognizable that you know for certain things. But either way, I'm wondering is Dr. Martin keeping them there? Either he just wants to, maybe it has to deal with some guilt in his own life where maybe he failed as a doctor and he's trying to compensate for it, like he knows what he's doing, but maybe he was unsuccessful with it in life and he's trying to cover up for that in death and in the afterlife. Or maybe he's specifically keeping them there because it does something, like maybe he's kind of a little bit of like a energy vampire and he's feeding off of all these ghosts staying there and any slipping through his grasp. You know, he's all about control and everything. Like, that's why I'm like, there's something definitely sinister about him. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, maybe it's just he's a little douchebag because it's like, hey, I want some control here because I had no control in my life and I didn't really help anyone. And maybe we'll find out maybe he's not as bad as we think, or maybe we'll find out like, he's just as villainous as we think. So that's where I was wondering, like, what Dawn was saying, like, could there be some truth to, like, hey, like, during hypnosis, could a ghost possess someone, and could that be what happened? Could a ghost kill a ghost, and maybe he killed Janet, and made it seem like, and they covered up, he's like, yeah, I helped her move on, or maybe she found out about his dark secret, or who knows what, but there was a part of me that was almost like, are we going to end up finding out the twist that actually Dr. Martin's actually the person who killed Rhonda, but Rhonda saying like it's this particular person, because like didn't she show what Mr. Manfredi or whatever it looked like? So, but I was thinking like maybe she was covering, being like, oh, it's this person, when in actuality it's Dr. Martin, so she's here with her kid. That's or abuser, you know. So like I don't know if that's it, but he definitely seems like a very like emotionally and mentally abusive person. And who knows if he is physically? Like I don't know. I'm interested to see where that kind of goes going forward. But the final twist in all of this is like, obviously it's like we can clear Mr. South if we can get that money. It at least put us in the right direction to be like, right, Mr. South is innocent. But that's what Nicole was burying last episode, the money she got from Anderson. But when they went back to dig it up, the money wasn't there. And in that moment, like, you know, Maddie being there, it kind of clicked in her memory started coming back about the time she was missing. This is where we get interesting. She actually had a confrontation with her mom, which specifically, I want to say it was Simon or Nicole. No, Simon that specifically said, your mom says she never found you. So now she's lying. Now you're doubling down on like the drinking. Like maybe she did something and she thought like, okay, maybe I hurt Maddie. Maybe I did something and Maddie's going to come back. And maybe that's why she's doubling down on the drinking. Cause it's like, right, maybe I did do something to Maddie, or maybe something happened to Maddie and it is my fault. It does seem like she went back to drinking immediately, maybe because she was hopeful, like, no, Maddie will come back. Like, maybe what I did wasn't so bad. And, you know, maybe she doesn't really remember what she did because she was severely drunk at the time. So, but it seemed like her and Maddie had an argument, and it seems like she might have taken the money. She definitely took it this time, and she ended up putting it in back in Maddie's room. Because she went there being like, hey, like some money was taken out of Maddie's drawer. And so it's the money Maddie had gotten from, well, she probably spent the money that Maddie had gotten from Mr. Anderson. And then she took the money Nicole had and like brought it back. Maybe she wanted to think like, maybe she's thinking like Nicole took it or something. I don't know what she's fully expecting from that, what she's thinking, but I don't think she did anything to Maddie. Well, killed her, but I think maybe she did something that she severely regrets. But now it's like Maddie's like, she remembers bits and pieces. She remembers arguing with her mom. She remembers seeing the weapon that was used to kill her, and it's like, my mom, I think she might have killed me, but I don't think she did. I think, once again, it's red herring after red herring, but I think something did go down, and it was so traumatic that Maddie blocked it, because it might have been right after the fact that she was murdered. So, I mean, not unless it ends up being like the sheriff or something. Once again, what his motivation would have been to kill her, that's to big thing. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see ultimately where all of this ends up taking us, especially because while Simon and Nicole were looking for the money, there was someone out there in the woods with them. So who that was, we'll have to wait and see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.